Hey there. How's it going? Can I get a sound check, please?
You're good.
Thank you, Mark. Well, if you showed up a little bit early, you might be able to guess that today is going to be a kind of a workflow day. I don't have new lecture material because we're working on this big project called the stair rendering. And instead of talking to you about the assignment, why we're doing the assignment and all that kind of stuff, which we've covered already, I thought I would just get right into what I promised you. You may remember back on the first day when I talked about this assignment, I had promised a kind of recipe or cookbook approach, and I'm using that as an analogy, of course. That's not really the way things are done in the profession, but I thought, it's kind of a nice way to think about it. If you are not a master chef and you want to create something special for your family in the kitchen, then you might refer to somebody like Gordon Ramsay, or I saw Kenji yesterday making his own mayonnaise, and I'm just interested in cooking in general too. So I thought, well, this will be a fun way to treat the class today. We'll just take this problem of rendering and this computer rendering and break it down into a kind of a step-by-step thing. I'll take notes while I do it, and side by side. So I've got my screen set up kind of half and half, where the modeler and renderer will be on one side and my notes will be on the other side. Hopefully I can maintain that. Kind of a new process for me. I've never tried this before. So you guys are going to be experimented on today. And I will save this file. It's currently in a format called Markdown, which I use to write text, but it gets easily converted into HTML, which of course is kind of what Microsoft Word uses. So I can save this file, and I will do so at the end so that you can refer to it again, print it out if you need to, and keep it side by side when you're modeling. And hopefully it's a way that if you do have questions, you can kind of point to the area where you got stuck, and I can help you through that. So unless there are, I should always, I didn't start with a real agenda today, so I kind of have this one thing to do, which makes an agenda kind of superfluous. But I should always ask before we get started if there are any questions about anything that you've discovered so far. So again, if you're taken aback by my abrupt style today and diving right in, we are working on 12.1 stair rendering. It's a project where in Sketch 12.1 you went out and measured some kind of good, monumental, architecturally interesting scale, architecturally interesting stair, excuse me. The Latin word for stair, I think, is escalier, and then that got translated into scale in my head, so got confused there for a second. But we're doing a stair, and the process is one where we model it, and then we want to create a computer rendering which far exceeds the capacity or the capability of SketchUp to produce a nice drawing. And we have ways of dealing with that on the board and by hand, but this is a slightly different exercise where we're going to try and stay as much as we can inside the box, and we're going to produce as near as we can to a photorealistic rendering as possible. I have been working this problem, I think on Tuesday. Yeah, it was Tuesday. I showed you some stuff in Blender. I took a break for dinner. I forget what we made. Oh, we made Korean street food. It was chicken. So speaking of recipes, this is a recipe of Graham's that he has, and it was outstanding. And then right after that, instead of making music, I got back on and I started playing with Blender some more, and I goofed around until about 12:30 that night. And so this stuff is fun for me. I share that with you not because I'm interested in sharing everything about my personal life with you, just to show you instead that this electronic modeling and computer rendering thing is a deeply interesting topic, at least to me, and I'd like to make it kind of the same ethic. Just be experimental. So today's lesson is a very experimental approach to this, and you'll see that for our first test case, we won't be using a stair, but in fact, we're just going to be using a plain old box. Let's take a look at it. It's a plain old box in the sense that it's our friendly 10 foot by 10 foot by 10 foot cube. I decided that for this, we would just start with a simple 1 foot frame around one side, push it back 1 foot, and then assign 2 different materials onto it. Now, you will see as we go over to my, I've done some work up to the point where I started the recording today. So the ingredients for our recipe include Google Images, which we'll see later in the advanced part of this recipe, SketchUp Modeler, Blender, Cycles Renderer, and our good friend GIMP. The steps so far that I've taken, I modeled rectangles in SketchUp because I've decided that that is a really nice way of thinking about what makes SketchUp such an effective modeler, is that, you know, it is trivial to draw a rectangle and push it up, and all of a sudden I have something, right? So just 2 moves, and then if I do the third thing, which is to turn it into a component, I've got some junk that I created, right? And then just as a review, since I've already done some of this, the way to assign a material is to pull up the materials window, which I guess is already up. It's over here. And it may get confusing with, watch this, actually will show the difference. So let's say that I want to turn this into some kind of metal. I can grab onto whatever it is and I can click onto this and it will turn the whole thing metal like that. But that doesn't help me if I want numerous materials because I've turned this into a component. So in order to change materials on some different surfaces, you have to double click, maybe select the surface that you want, and then go paint that one surface like that, right? And then same thing for the top. If I want a third different sample of material, I might dump that on there like that. Okay, so and then as we look and zoom in on that, you can see that indeed it has 3 different materials on it. Okay, cool. Let's get ourselves back into position, orbit, and so that we can see the top in an interesting view. And let's get rid of my junk. And just for giggles, just because I'm built that way, let's look at our components. We've got Chris and the junk thing that I just created, and what I'd like to do is purge unused, just to keep my model clean. I'm going to keep Chris in there to provide some scale for us and to also to show you something cool about that. Okay, so far we have made a rectangle in SketchUp. We've turned it into a component, and we've assigned some what I call proxy materials because we're probably going to change these during the advanced portion of this discussion. And so what we'd like to do now is just to go ahead and test a render workflow. And what I want to do is to first export. Let me write some things in here. Oops. R period A and 1 2 3 4 1, and we're going to export a model to a Collada file and then import Collada to Blender, and then well, let's see. Okay, so let's write that so we don't lose that, and let's do this thing. So first up, we go File, Export, 3D Model, change it to, there's only two options in SketchUp Make, and we want to use the first option, which is Collada.dae, and just make sure that we preserve the component hierarchies. Just make sure that box is checked, and then oakley dokley, and let's make sure we remember where it's going. So I'll go to the desktop. Okay, that was easy. While we're here, let's just go ahead and save. And now let's, I'm going to pull, let's see, what's the best way to do this? I want to open up Blender. There's, unfortunately, it'd be cool if I could split my screen again. But here we are in Blender. Let's just try this because I still like, I want to do this. So let's go to this, and then let's pull this across and this across like this. And now the thing to do is to, oops, tile the left side of the screen, and maybe I start with the other one first. Terminal, yeah, we need to reduce this. It's not taking up the whole thing. Now we can tile the right side of the screen and click on this, and we are good to go. Great. So it's a portrait view of our Blender working environment, but that's okay. Recall that some of the navigation things I told you, I'm just scrolling with my mouse wheel, and if I need to pan around, I can grab the H or the hand, and if I need to orbit, I can do this. Right? As you recall, when we were talking before, in its base, in the outliner, we've got a camera, we've got a cube, and we've got a light. Every time you open up a new file in Blender, this is what you're given. I'm going to go ahead and X and delete this box because we have our own cube to bring in, and we do that by import Collada default file. Go to where we left it, and it's called SketchUp and as you can see, we came in on it really closely, and I don't see my window. There it is. So that's one interesting thing to note, that let's zoom out and see where we are. Okay, so that it came in sort of as a different orientation to than what I was expecting, but that's okay. We can find ourselves, and again, I'm just orienting this in such a way that it looks good for us. All right, so we've imported Collada to Blender. What's our next move? Well, we're here just to test, so let's go ahead and there we go. Render, or test render. And the way to do that is with the render button up here, and just say render image. However, before we do that, there's actually a nicer way to test render, and that is to switch from workflow, what's it called? Viewport, let's see. So switch from solid render to, what's this one going to be called? Rendered. Switch from solid to rendered. Okay, and that looks like this. So currently I've got all these buttons up here, and it's selected solid. If I go to the last one and select viewport like that, then we have our beginning idea, right? And right now, the face of what we want to show is not in the sun. So we now want to, with our Herculean powers, we want to move the sun to an interesting position. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let's do that. And remember, the way to do that is to scroll out. Let's pick that sun, which is right here. And we've got a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to promote today the idea of using shortcuts. And you remember the shortcut is G for move. So let me put that down there. And we'll say like example GX or GY. Let's shrink this down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so what the heck does that mean, Eric? GX or GY? Well, let's watch this. If I select my sun and I say, okay, let's look first up here at the orbiting tool. We see that the red line is X and the green line is Y. So let's first move, let's go in the Y direction. I said that purposely, even though it's weird language, right? Let's go in the Y direction. So GY locks me in the Y direction, and I pull the sun along that Y axis until I'm kind of in the front. And that might be as much as we need to do. Oops. I tried to use a SketchUp command there to no avail, right? So that's looking pretty good. All right. So there's a problem with our glass, it appears to me. So let's add a note here. And let's change glass material alpha. And I'll put that in quotes as well. Alpha. All right. Here we go. So what does that mean, Eric? First, we got to go and select the glass. And you can see there's an orange thing around it. And then we got to memorize one of these things. There's this one that's right next to the bottom that looks like a globe. And again, I don't understand the icon here, why they chose a globe. That to me would talk about positioning, but to them it's about material properties. And we may need to pull this out so we can read it a little bit. And this, we know from SketchUp that material was transparent, but in its current version of this render, it's not transparent. We can see that. So it turns out, through a little bit of research, I learned that has to do with alpha. And here's the alpha characteristic here. And to test it, we could just put this at 50. And indeed, it looks like we might be able to, it looks a little bit more like it's reflective, at least. In fact, 50 is, it should have been 0.5. So let's try that. Let's try 0.5. Ah, there we go. So we're starting to get something that looks a little bit like glass, still a little bit opaque. So I'm going to draw this slider down a little bit and just leave it so that it is, so the higher we go toward 1 and the lesser we go towards 0 without getting to 0, maybe just, we'll put it in here about 13.2% or something like that. All right, let's see how that works. Now, the next thing we want to do, so we've changed the material to glass, and we might change other materials if we wanted to, but I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, what I want to do is change the render engine from Eevee, I don't know if that's how it's spelled, we'll see in a second, to cycles. So the default render engine is good for working, but it's not the most beautiful looking render. So let's let's find that under the camera icon, which is called render properties. And you can see that it's the render engine is Eevee. The workbench option is what we had before. That's what we were working with. And what we want is cycles. Oh, and see how beautiful that is already? How that glass that we could not see through before is now something that we can see through on the inside. This looks like a pretty good thing to render. So let's render then. So we should add that to our list, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Do a test render. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Save the file to view in browser. This is going to be a pretty long recipe, isn't it? I got sort of like every, breathe now. That's the next thing on the recipe. No, that's not true. Okay, let's give ourselves a little more working space here by collapsing this, and we'll zoom in. Oh, you know what we haven't done? Well, I'll show you what happens if we just hit render at this point. We haven't moved our camera, but that's okay. Let's just do a test render. With any luck, it's from this view. Oops. Render image. Okay. So as you can see, it's filling up my screen slowly. I could change these render properties to be smaller. Right now, it's set to essentially 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels high, which is my screen resolution for the Blackmagic. And it's this may be good enough for us to think about. I think that I like the way that the glass is transparent. And let's cancel this now by clicking there, and let's work on that camera. Okay, so this requires some more steps. Modify render environment. That'll be the next couple things. So we want, we already moved the sun, so I'm not going to put that again, but we need to move the camera and reposition view. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so how do we do that? There's an icon up here that says toggle the camera view, so let's click on that, and sure enough, that's what we got in the render window. You can see that the bright spot is what the camera is going to render. We need to change that, and to me the quickest way to do that is to pull open this transform side window, go down to view, click on camera to view, and what this does is allows us to move the camera logically as if we were looking through the camera, as opposed to moving it in a transform environment by changing it. And so I can zoom in and out, and I can really position this nicely and smartly in here. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's looking very smart indeed. Okay, so I've got the whole thing, and now when I'm done, this is something to remember is unclick the camera to view box. We can reduce this again, and now when we zoom in and out, we're seeing the environment itself get larger, as if we were stepping away from the camera instead of zooming in with the camera lens. So what was that? Uncheck, check, and then uncheck the, what was that called? The camera to view. Okie dokie. So, and we'll put that in camera to view. Okay. Rerun test. So you can, we can anticipate what it's going to look like, but if you want to, you can rerun the test. And if you want the test to go faster, just to let you know that you can change some of these environmental conditions, like we can go up here to the render environment and, or maybe it's in the print. Yeah. So we could change this to, it'll go faster if, for instance, let's do it like 1/10 of the size. So we'll do 192 by 108. Cool. And this will, now when we hit, watch this, when we hit the render button, it'll go pretty quickly. Zoom, right? But it's a tiny little image, right? It's only 192 pixels wide, but it's a good trade-off between, you know, doing something quickly and effectively. So that was great. Let's before we forget, we'll change this back to 0. No, 1920 by 1080. Okay, so that was our original orientation. We like it. Everything's looking good. So now let's start having some fun. Oops. I keep just grabbing that same pull-out window. So now we're going to have some fun. Let's change some materials. So before we get out of here, let's make sure that we save Blender file. And return to SketchUp for advanced materials. Don't know why I capitalized that. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. So let's get caught up here. File, save, and I'm going to go to the desktop and let's just call it test render. Goody gumdrops. All right, there we go, and we're out of here. So I'm going to pull Blender out of the scene and bring up SketchUp again. And that will put me in a position of having to just make this smaller again. And it's always faster the second time. Let's go here and right and here. Okay, so right off the bat, you can tell, and I'll slide this over. You can see that that is the crappiness that we get in SketchUp, and then our, well, I'll save it for later. So what do we want to do? We want to change. We sort of want to make up our own material, and I think I showed you that last time we were together, I showed you that I made a material in GIMP. And make material in GIMP for import. So I guess I was a little premature in thinking that we could return to this so quickly. So let's go here, and hopefully my resources on my computer will hold up. Let's type GIMP. And let's also type Chrome. And let's go find us something interesting. Like, what could we do today? I think I want to change the glass to something interesting. So ribbed glass. Let's see what we've got in images and what we can play with. So we've got some ribbed glass. There's some, what I sort of want, oh, I like this. It's got a little bit of color in it too. So we're going to open this image in, I guess, you know, we'll deal with a really small image here. Actually, I could probably just save this. Save image as. All right, so we'll go to the desktop again, and we'll just leave it as it is. And let's go ahead and kill Chrome so that we get our resources back. We're in GIMP. Let's open as layers this thing that I just saved to the desktop. That looks like this. Cool. I could like double this, I could change it, but it probably will work as is. So just to say that we changed something though, let's go ahead and change the color maybe. Let's change the hue to, yeah, that's nice. So as you can see, I'm manipulating some things. That's a little bit crazy on the chroma, so we probably keep that pretty much where it is. And we could change the lightness. We'll add it like this and like that. Okay, so all we did was we came in here and we changed a few things. Let's make it even bluer. Okay, cool. So let's export this, of course. You remember you can't use it as an XCF file. You have to use it as a some kind of raster file. So let's choose a PNG, which is our favorite. And let's make sure that we know it's different by putting an X in front of it. And realize that we went from green to this. Okay. We should be able to get rid of GIMP now. Discard changes. I don't need to save that. And let's go up here. And I'm just going to keep this full screen for now. And one thing that I want to show you is that I should be able to double click on this, select this, file, import the image as texture. Remember, most of the time this is use as image, but we want it to be used as texture for this application. And we can put it here, and then, oh, I wish I had my X-ray vision on. All right, so let's do that. Let's change the view so that I can see X-ray through this, and that will allow me to grab that back corner. So I'll do this again. I'll double click. I'll select the material that I want to import onto. I'll select the material that I modified, import, select the bottom, and now I can grab that back corner and we'll select off of it. And you can see, okay, cool. That's our new material. And yeah, let's just change the one. So we better make some notes, I think. Tile left side of the screen, this one. All right, what did we do? Modify to taste in GIMP. And then select face in component, import import image material as texture. Hopefully you can remember that. Rerun test in Blender. Better save that file. Okay, here we go. So we're returning back to an earlier part of the description. And so we're going to export 3D model, and let's change this now to something unique. X and Collada file, and there we go. And now let's get out of the camera view in Blender. We'll pull this back over. And we'll go full screen with Blender for this one. So again, we've got our old image that we worked with, right? And that's this one. So let's take that and actually turn it off by turning the hide in viewport thing off, and that did not work, did it? So we may be forced at some point to delete this. I want to use this same file because it's got our nice sun set up and stuff like that. So just for giggles, let's go ahead and select all. Let's select all this stuff here. X and delete. All right, cool. And I could save it as a unique name before I did that, but in the interest of time, we'll just do this. Okay, cool. So as you can see, that came in. It is surprisingly dark. There it is in the solid view. So again, if we follow the same technique, did I delete the sun? Oh my gosh, I deleted the sun. So that's exactly what I didn't want to do. So I'm going to undo out of this. There's my sun. Yep. So let's orbit around. Let's orbit around so that I don't have a selection conflict. And let's try this again. Delete. And now file import Collada X import. Okay, good. Yeah, nice. Just what we wanted. Let's go back to our view, and that's looking sweet. Now remember that we got a new material now, so we've got to change it again. And the way to do that, if we return to our recipe, is to go to the materials button, scroll down to add some alpha, and we'll make it 0.1 because that was so nice. Maybe a little bit more this time, like 0.5. Yeah, and that way we get to see some of the ribbing. So that was important for you to see, right? See how I can really tweak the alpha to get the level of transparency that I want and reflectivity. You can play with some of these values, right? There's probably, you can even make it cast off light. That's called transmission. So let's just goof around a little bit and try that 0.5. So that would make like this shelf be a little bit brighter if we were able to work on that. And if you want, I'm not going to waste your time with that. I regret actually showing you, but there are ways of really tweaking this glass. You can make it reflective. That's not necessary for our assignment, but if you want to, that's something you can play with. And that's looking pretty good. So let's export this render first by rendering it. So this will take just a second, and we can see how lovely our ribbed glass is that we picked up off of the internet, and really cool. And we can see through it. It's got some nice kind of character to it. It's got a new blue color to it instead of the green that we picked up, and we could tweak that even some more if we wanted to. So let's let this come into focus, and you can watch this progress up here. It says that there's 4 minutes remaining, but my experience is this picks up speed, and it really only takes about a minute to do. And I could have made it smaller, I suppose, for our purposes. You can see that there's another way of checking the progress. It's got tiles that it's doing. There are 510 tiles in this view, and these are the tiles that are being rendered, as you can see. And gosh, that just looks so nice. And this kind of dish, if you want to call it that, since we're making a recipe, this kind of dish only gets better as you add more ingredients and add more flair to it. But let's go ahead and save this from this render menu, and we'll call it we'll just call it, well, doesn't matter. We'll say advanced render test. And save as image. All right, so one thing, this is the kind of bonus component here. Let's call up GIMP again. And just because we're doing something new doesn't mean you have to forget all the things that you've done before. You could tweak this even some more by pulling it up into, let's see, I've lost it. Advanced, there it is, advanced test render. Okay, so there's our advanced test render, and to me, maybe we want to change the exposure a little bit so we can make it a little bit more dynamic. Let's drop the, and then maybe bring up the black level a bit. So you can see I've added some contrast to that. And that might be nice. What else could I do? I could add a filter to it. Video stopped working. Crap. What happened? Are you still seeing this? Hey, Mark.
We can see it.
Okay, good. I saw that my video stopped working and I don't know why. Great. Thank you so much, Mark. All right, let's do one more thing to this with a filter. Let's take the what's the one I like so much? Oilify.
I think you're frozen now.
Okay, so it was just lagged a little bit. Let's see, what can I do to improve that? So Mark, stay on board with me here, and we'll see what I can do. Has anything changed for you?
No.
It's still frozen.
Yeah.
All right, let me swap to see if you can see my head. Do you see my head?
Yeah.
Okay. And now how about the video? Can you see that?
It halfway turned on, and now it's like half looking at you and half looking at the video.
All right.
Oh, now it's back to you.
How about that?
It's not fully going on to that for some reason.
That's strange. I agree. Let's see if I can go to black and then back to me. And does it go all the way to black?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure why it's doing that with my screen, but it should be okay on the video that I'm taking. I just want to do one more thing, which is to drop an Oilify filter on this, and let's just let it run. And so, yeah, it says my video stopped working again. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay. I must be using too many resources. That's okay. It'll be perfect on the, let's see, Ian says, what does Ian say? Yeah, I do have quite a lot of, I tell you what, I'm going to simplify this. I'm going to start reducing some of my stuff that I got open. And let's get rid of SketchUp. Go ahead and save that. And let's get rid of Blender. It's working now. Your CPU might be overheating. Yeah, it's funny you say that. The CPU on these new Mac M1s, they run with they're extremely efficient, so they don't really get hot. I suppose I could pull it up and tell you what my CPU temperature is, but the fans like never come on. Like my MacBook Pro by this time would have been roaring and squealing and just like a stuck pig. It would be very unhappy. But this Mac Mini that I have, I never hear the fan come on. So yeah, I think probably I had actually just blown through my 16 gigs of RAM when I kind of was pushing it, so I have only myself to blame. So what we can do though is let's now that it's working again, I've reduced my my demands on it, I guess. Let's go ahead and we've swapped sides, but that'll work okay for us. So we reran the test in Blender. I got to catch up on my recipe, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we exported a final test render. We opened in GIMP and made modifications. And then, so I guess the thing to say now is wash, rinse, and repeat. And that's my way of saying that it's the old parable, right? If you cook a fish for a hungry person, then you've fed them for the day. But if you show them how to fish and how to make that fish, then it's, in other words, this is a scalable idea. Okay, so as you work this problem, I would encourage you to do the little box recipe that I did, right? Make the small box test yourself using this sort of recipe that we've just created. And then when you're ready to do it in a more complex way, I would start applying materials to your stair. And one thing that is sort of, I'll say it out loud because it's not obvious. I went to Google Images to grab my ribbed glass. But there's nothing that stops me from taking like a straight-on picture, a photograph with my phone. I guess I should do it this way, right? With my phone of the material that I'm actually measuring, right? So when you're out in the field measuring, you should also probably take some good photographs of the material if you want to use that exact same material in your model. You can do that by just bringing that image into and importing it into SketchUp, and it will be carried through the export process to Blender, and then while in Blender, and if you do the cycles render, it can look really lovely. I thought, that was a 500 pixel wide image of ribbed glass, and it ends up looking pretty nice, I think. Let's go ahead and pull that up. File, open, file, and our advanced test render. Let's go out of here. I guess here it is. Well, let's pull it up. I sort of brightened it up, I think. There we go. So that looks, I don't know, pretty good to me. If we were to get close to this material, let's do that. You could probably see some pixelation, but I'm still not seeing it. And we are, I guess it's a little bit pixelated, a little bit fuzzy, but the cycles render, look at how soft that is in there. That is just, oh my gosh, that's really, hold on, I'll find it again. We are really pixel peeping. That's what the photographers call this, right? That is astonishingly good for my money, since it's free. And you can see that it's a great render. Now imagine how good the marble stone would look if we actually used a bigger slab of marble to put that on the side of this. Now, I don't know what the materials are going to be on your stair, and I'm not saying that you absolutely have to use the same materials. You could just use colors, for instance. The only thing I'm interested in is that we get this kind of quality of light. So even if you use solid colors on your model and you don't have any glass, I've chosen to do glass today because it's kind of a challenge, because it introduces that that new element of alpha that we have to alter. But again, this list looks like a huge list now, but hopefully that'll be helpful to you because it's kind of like step by step, and you can go through it, and you get hung up on a step, you don't exactly remember something, then that's a really nice specific question you can ask. And or you could go back and review the video, which of course is preferred, right? So I'm gonna make sure that I know that already got this being recorded in our session, but I'm going to make sure that the good quality video that I've also been recording in OBS Studio is replaced with a streamed version so that you can look at it. If you want to, you can download it, and you can. And I'll probably also think about. Actually, this has gone, sort of longer than I thought it would. This was like a 50-minute demonstration. So I guess I don't have to do any trimming of it. I'll just make it available for the other class as well. And they can refer to it also. They're like a half class behind because of the reading day that we had last week. Take a deep breath. Count back from 10. So, how about it? Was that interesting at all? Kind of cool? Something that you would stay up until 12:30 at night doing? Probably not. I wouldn't ask you to do that. But I played with all kinds of different things that night until I came up with this kind of streamlined version, which you're seeing now. So I've probably modeled this cube. If I had to guess, I've modeled this cube 15 different times with 20 different materials on it, using different settings, trying to discover the alpha setting. I've been in and out of GIMP trying to see, well, how good can I make this final rendering look if I bring it into GIMP? And I was hoping to show you that today, but my computer said no. Just no. Cool. Any questions that you need going into the weekend that you don't feel like we covered today? Let me check the chat conversation, make sure that we're just talking about frozen, overheating CPUs. Yep, we're good. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to wish you a happy weekend. I've got, let's see, can I use Fusion and import it into SketchUp? So, Ian, I don't know much about Fusion. It is possible that you could export your Fusion model in a format that Blender could see, or it's also possible that Fusion has a nice rendering package. So I don't really know how to answer your question because I don't know much about it. I can do some research though, and but you could too. You could just like do some test, see if Fusion is possible to. But let's see. Here's a more direct answer to your question. If you want to go that route, Fusion probably allows you to export as a maybe a DXF file or a DWG file if it's from AutoCAD. And okay, I've rendered in Fusion and moved it into Blender via SketchUp as well. Great, cool. All right, so you're on it. I'll be interested to actually, if you could share with us. Oh, Fusion can export directly into SketchUp. Nice, nice. All right, good. So you're good to go. I'll be interested to see what you come up with because I don't have any experience with that program.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Could you send like a link for downloading Blender again?
Sure. I don't think I gave it to you in the first place, so let's switch to that, and we'll just go there now. Blender.org, and click on download, and choose your weapon. Right? Got lots of different operating systems there that you can choose. If you haven't heard this recommendation before already, if you're on a PC and you're given the choice between a 64-bit version and a 32-bit version, I think you always want to choose the 64-bit version. Mac OS doesn't give me that option anymore. It's all 64 bits from here. Okay, is that enough for you?
Yeah, that should be good. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, blender.org. Groovy. All right, so let's see. I got more activity, which may or may not be inside of... Yep, good. All right, cool. You get multiple reports of chats. I don't know if you noticed that, but let's see. We've got our class in session window from Teams, but there's also the Teams background thing that I can see too, so that confused me a little bit. All right, well, I'm mumbling now, so we don't need that. The professor already seems old enough, so let's call this party to a halt. I'll be seeing you. Have a great weekend, and hit me up with any questions. I'm here for the afternoon, of course. Let's see. Thank you. You're welcome, Hannah. Talk to you later.